Hello and welcome to my channel Inch by Inch Art. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made a really cool Rocky Horror lip pin out of polymer clay. So first I'm just going to make the teeth. I'm going to do this by using transparent polymer clay. Sculpey has it. I'm sure a few other brands have the same color, but you're looking for translucent. It's sort of whitish, and after it's baked it's a little see-through, just like your teeth are. So you don't need to add anything to it or do anything. You just want to shape them like little teeth. I choose to bake the teeth first because it makes it easier to press them into the still soft clay when you're doing the background and the lips. This is a pin that I found, but I don't end up using it in the end. I use a different pin back, but could have been an option if I had just made it slightly differently. So I just take black because that's going to be the background for the depth of the mouth, and I don't want to have to paint if I can avoid it behind the teeth. So I'm using the black colored polymer clay. I roll it out a little bit with my hands to heat it up, and then I put it through my pasta machine to roll it into a flat sheet. I then place my teeth about where I think I want them, and then move on to my red polymer clay and start to roll it with my fingers into a general lip shape. I'm just going to do the upper lip first before I move on to the bottom lip. And here I am just using the dotted end of my sculpting tool to mark off where the top of the black should end. And I'm folding this over so that I can overlap on the teeth a little bit to sort of lock them in before I add the lips on top. And I'm just cutting away the excess. I start to use my pointed silicone sculpting tool to shape the lips more. I go back and use another tool to refine this because I didn't like how it came out the first time. Here I'm starting to put lines on the upper lip. I end up not being happy with the shape of these later, and I reshape them a bit more and have to go through this again, but the video came out pretty good, so I figured it was a good opportunity to show you how I do the little wrinkles that are in lips. So just taking this angled silicone sculpting tool, I run it with a tiny bit of pressure, just enough to nick the surface and get those little lines to appear. Here I am making the lower lip. I want the teeth to show just a little bit like they do in my reference image, which is from the cover of the Rocky Horror movie. So I need to try to move them around and place them exactly where I want them, which is another reason it worked out well that I had baked the teeth first. Now I'm just using this sculpting tool to try and pry the teeth up a bit. The whole idea is that the person is biting their lower lip, so I'm trying to make sure that the teeth are actually on top of the red lower lip clay a little bit. So after I've smoothed it with my finger, I then go back again with my angled silicone sculpting tool, just like I did before. Now that I'm happy with the shape and the contours of the lip, I'm all set for this part of detail. I hadn't totally decided how thick I wanted the pin to be or how I wanted the edge of it to look. I knew that I was going to be putting it on my backpack, so I decided that I wanted the whole edge to still be red and not suddenly change to black. I just rolled out some worms of clay and added them on the edges to cover the black, and then smoothed it all out with my silicone sculpting tool to give it a nice finish. And here's the pin back I end up going with instead of the first one I showed you. I could have put the other one on, but it would have made it stick out much further and be a much larger pin. So I'm using isopropyl alcohol on a fairly fluffy but pointed paintbrush. I'm just going to lightly paint with the alcohol over the lips to clean it up, remove fingerprints, and sort of smooth out the wrinkle lines in the lips. This will make it look more realistic because it won't be such hard lines. And now I'm going to use the liquid Sculpey to adhere the pin on the back. I decided to do this rather than a ball of clay, which I could have used to press it into, because I was worried that any pressing might mess up the mouth because I hadn't baked it yet, and I didn't want to lose my details or smush it by pressing on the back at all. So this was the gentlest way I could do it, and it's worked out really good. This pin got ripped off of my backpack recently at the airport, and the pin backing bent a bit, but it stayed on. So here it is baked, and you can see the pin's on pretty good and I can use it just fine. And I'm going to use my Vallejo black acrylic paint to do a bit of a wash. I was up in the air about doing this, but the more reference photos I looked at, the more I felt like it should have a bit of a dark look to it. It's a very black image and there's a lot of shadow on it, so I felt that the black would help boost the shadow and give more depth to the lips. And I'm just gonna quickly paint black the little parts of red clay that were still showing on the black clay on the back that I just hadn't noticed before I baked it. And I'm careful to try and keep this off of the teeth, so I'm really just shooting for the lips, and the darker I can make it towards the lips, the better, because I want to boost that three-dimensional look. So once I've finished with the black, I decided that it should actually have more red to make it look like the lips have really strong lipstick on them, because that's the look in Rocky Horror. So I went through all of my paints and I found every single red in every different brand that I had, and I decided to just do a quick test sheet to compare them and see which color red I wanted. So this is just me going through all the different brands that I have and doing my little test swatches. I was pretty surprised by some of the colors, and I'm glad that I let them dry, because some of these, when they come out of the tube, they do not look red at all. They look like magenta or orange. It was kind of odd. I feel like I always notice it every time I go to use red paint, but when I'm making things at the time, I'm just like, oh yeah, I need some red paint, and I'm not thinking about the fact that it's sometimes a struggle to pick which one is the right one. So after I go through all that, I decide that the acrylic Rust-Oleum Craft is actually the red that I want to go with. And I'm still glad that I made the lips out of red colored clay. I did do that on purpose rather than like a beige color, but I felt that it really needed this extra red because it looked too, I don't want to say bruised, but just slightly too dark with the black wash. So I'm basically doing a dry brush to the entire thing with a very flat, wide brush, and it looked much better once it had the red on. So now I'm using UV resin to make it look even more lifelike. So wet teeth, saliva, moist lips, lots of lipstick, just as I expect from Rocky Horror lips. Using my silicone sculpting tool to just sort of push the resin around. And I'm putting it under my nail UV curing light. Well, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to see more of me making my art, please like, follow, and subscribe.